Thanks everybody for coming. My name is Matt Heemstra. I'm with Cain, Ellsworth and Company. We're going to talk a little bit about change. It's a big topic and we only have now about 40 minutes, so there's no way we can make anything about change easy. There's no way we can give you some kind of magic bullet for how to make change simple, but what we can do is give you some practical stuff that can help you personally and in your business be better at change. Just a little context so you know who you're listening to. Like I said, I'm with Cain, Ellsworth and Company. We're an advisory and accounting firm. We have an office in Sioux Falls, and we started in Sheldon, Iowa. If any of you know where Sheldon, Iowa is, it's kind of the northwest part of the state. We've been around for about 50 years. It'll be 50 next year, I think. We have 24, 25 people. We do all the things you think of a CPA firm doing. So we do taxes and audits and payroll and bookkeeping and all that kind of stuff. But our goal is to help our clients' businesses succeed. And all that accounting stuff is great for that, but if you stop with that, you don't really get that accomplished. So what we really try to do is emphasize the future. And there's a part of our practice we call Growth and Profit Solutions, or GPS, and that's where I spend my time. I'm the Director of Growth and Profit Solutions at our firm, and GPS is strictly future-driven. So I'm a CPA, but I don't do any accounting anymore. The last 2 years, I had to have one of our interns help me do my tax return, which I'm okay with that. But I spend my time doing things like strategy and planning and growth and profitability and leadership training and leadership development and coaching and stuff like this, just to help people make change in their businesses. I've been with the firm for about 10 years, a little over 10 years. I'm a partner there. I live with my wife and our twin 6th grade daughters, a little south of Sheldon. So I come to stuff like this because here nobody tells me to my face I'm stupid. So I'm pretty excited about that. You guys can talk about me behind my back all you want, but just right now my daughter's favorite phrase is "actually, Dad," and whatever I say, that's what they followed up with. So that's a little about me. Well, I figured when they're like 14, that'll get better, right? Thanks. Thanks for coming. Right, so let's talk a little about change. I used to do something similar to this, and I'd have a slide that says change is the new normal. But after a while, it's really not new anymore. Everybody talks about change a lot. Everybody talks about all these different things in the world that are different now and changing all the time. There's an acronym that the military uses a lot that I like, VUCA, V-U-C-A. They use it to describe certain chaotic situations, combat situations, some of that kind of thing. But I think it applies to business and to our companies as well. Volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And I think when you think about what we face on a daily basis in our companies, all 4 of those apply. There's a lot of stuff that changes really quickly. We don't know what it's going to be. It's kind of complicated, and some stuff we just have no idea. And there's a lot of things that cause that. I think technology is one. When you look at industries that have been disrupted by technology, I don't think any more than manufacturing has seen that. Output from manufacturers in this country is up somewhere around 20% in the last 10 years, and jobs are down in manufacturing by about a quarter-ish, somewhere in there. And that's largely technology, whether it's robotics or AI or all those kinds of things. It's had a huge impact on how we do business. Globalization, you hear a lot of talk about that. I like to sum it up as just say, it used to be you had to be better than the company down the street, and now everybody on earth is on your street. People can buy what you make almost anywhere. So you don't just have to be better than people close to you. You have to be world class. So that's a change. Shifting demographics, I think there have to be 1,000 people in the United States right now who are making a killing going around giving speeches about millennials and baby boomers and all that stuff. And it's totally legitimate. All the generations see things differently. As the baby boomers go out and the millennials come in, and now the millennials are all in the workforce, and Generation Z after them starts this year. They all have different desires, needs, they buy different ways, they think different ways. So that changes how we do things for our customers and how we do things for our people and everything in between. So all those things cause all this change and then some. But I think you can sum it up in that bottom quote. We're in a world where you can be great what you do today and out of business tomorrow. And I'm not sure that that's ever been quite as true as it is now. So that's why we're here. Like I said, we're not going to make change easy because that's not a thing. But it doesn't have to be scary and it doesn't have to be a mystery. I think sometimes when I talk with businesses and people in businesses, they'll say, well, I'm just naturally not very good at change. There really isn't a naturally good or not good at change. There are specific things that people and companies do that are good at change that we can all learn how to do. Whether it's specific action, behavior, thought process, all that kind of stuff. So we'll talk through some of that today in 3 parts. Most businesses, if you ask them about change, they just say change is hard. And that's true. And we're not, like I said, we're not going to fix that. Somewhere in the neighborhood of 70% and it's research from Harvard and a whole bunch of other places, but somewhere in the neighborhood of 70% of change initiatives that businesses start don't succeed. So you think about the amount of time and energy and resources and money we spend trying to make change and how much of it doesn't really work out the way we want. Okay, so when we talk about change today, we're going to try to talk about how to make successful change. And when I say successful change, what I mean is two things. One is it has to be significant. When we're talking about change, I'm not talking about you put a different picture of your kids on the wall, or you got a new monitor for your computer, or you turn the thermostat down a degree in the wintertime. That's not significant change. I'm talking about how you redo a process to make it more efficient or effective, how you change your product or how you change how you manufacture your product, how you provide customer service the way you do that. Something that's significant in how you do business. And the outcome is you have results, right? And it changes those results. I'll give you an example. We have a client who, they're a manufacturer, and they've been in business for probably 80 years. They've never had a sales force. So it was always catalog or call in, that kind of thing. And they decided probably 10 or 15 years ago, sales are kind of going down. Well, we'll try that. We're going to try to have a sales force. We're going to hire some salespeople, hire a vice president of sales, put together a marketing plan, and go do that. So they did. And I hired some people, and they went out and did all this stuff. And I talked to them a little while later, and I said, well, how'd that go? It was great. We did a great job. We implemented this change. I said, so are sales up? No. Well, then did you really successfully make change, or did you just do a whole bunch of extra work? And I think the result for a lot of people's change is we did a bunch of extra work, but it really didn't change anything. Okay, so when we talk about successful change today, we're talking about a significant difference in how we do things and a significant difference in the results we get. And there's a process for that. And it isn't complex, it's pretty simple, but you have to follow the steps, and you have to start at the beginning. So the first thing to do when you make change is nothing. And that seems kind of counterintuitive. We get rewarded for doing things, right? Think about when you started off with your job, or the first job you ever had, or any job you have. You go to some kind of performance appraisal, and what do? You want to talk about all the stuff you did this year. I got this done, I accomplished this, I did this. And that's great. We all have to-do lists and all this thing we're trying to get done. What if you get to the end of the year and everything you worked on was kind of meaningless? I mean, how do you know the stuff you worked on is really worth doing? There's a lot of value put on being busy, I think, but being busy and being successful, or being busy and making successful change, are not necessarily the same thing. Okay, so before you do anything, stop and think about what are the right things to actually be doing. And the process we use, like I said, is very simple. Okay, we start with, where is your business right now? In terms of people, in terms of products, all those kinds of things. And we have people put that all down on flip sheets and all that stuff. And that's usually not very hard, right? We work in our businesses every day. If I ask you to describe your business to me, you probably could do it. The problem then is everybody sees all this list of things describing their business, and they say, oh, I want to fix that. I got to fix that. We got to do something about that, without really thinking about what are they trying to accomplish? What is really the end goal for our business? What do we want that to look like when we're done? Where do we want to be? And you have to really take time to think through, where is it we're trying to go with this business? Because if you don't have a clear picture, if you don't have a clear image in your mind, a clear, measurable, definable outcome of where you're trying to go as a business, or even with a division in a business or a product within your business, if you don't have that at the end, how do you ever know you accomplished it? And usually the answer is you don't. So before you figure out how you're going to do stuff, figure out what stuff to do. So as I do these things, and I do a fair number of these, I've found that me speaking the whole time usually doesn't work very well. So what I'd like you to do is just take 60 seconds. You don't have to talk. I'm not going to call on anybody. But just take 60 seconds and jot down some bullet points about how you would describe your business right now. Okay? I think I've met maybe a couple of you in my life. So if you were going to describe your business to me, a complete stranger, how would you do it? Think about profit or whatever other metric you look at. Maybe it's margin, maybe it's whatever. Think about products you offer, think about your customers, think about how you market, think about people, think about processes. How would you describe that business now? Okay, I'll just give you a minute. We're not going to solve anybody's problems today. We're not going to come up with some big grand plan. I just want you to get in the habit of thinking through problems and thinking through change in terms of where are we now and where do we want to be. So just take a minute and think about that. Jot some things down. Like I said, I'm not going to call on you, so you can be honest. I want you to think about how you'd like to describe where your business is to somebody in 5 years, or 3 years, 1 year, whatever time frame your brain can get around. Sometimes the further out you go, the harder it is. But how would you like to describe, if you just described your business to me now, and then I don't see you for 3 or 4 or 5 years, and then I run into you on the street and I say, how's your business? How would you like to describe where your business is in a few years? Think about the same things. Think about profit or whatever metrics you like. Think about products. Who are your customers? Why are they your customers? What are you offering to them? How are you reaching those people? What about your people? You have more people, less people, better people, worse people, people with more skills, people with different skills, no people at all. What processes are you going to have to be really good at? And don't just necessarily think manufacturing process, although that could be part of it, but what segment of your business is really going to have to be strong in a few years? Just take a couple minutes for that. Again, I don't expect you to come up with some big, huge plan, but we don't often take enough time to think about where we're going. So here's your 2 minutes to do that. Now you have your now and your where. You can see those gaps, so that's the stuff to start working on, and that's true. Problem is, if you do this for real, and I think back to our firm does this, a few years ago we did this, and when we came up with bullet points for our where, we had 130. Well, you can't work on 130 things at once. So somehow you've got to prioritize, all right? So let's talk about that where a little bit. Things to think about as you do that, and like I said, we did this for 1.5 minutes or 2 minutes, but as you do this in your company or in your division or whatever change you're trying to make, keep some of these things in mind. There has to be a defined reference point to start from. That's your now. And it can't be vague. I think back to a manufacturer I met probably 10 years, well, not 10 years ago, 6 or 8 years ago. And I'd never met them before, and we were talking about change and what are they doing in their business. And they said, well, one of the things that we've decided to work on, customer service has really improved in our industry and we need to do better. So one of the things we want to do is from the time a customer calls till the time we've resolved whatever their issue is, whether it's we got to fix something, send them a part, whatever it is, from the time they call until the time it's done, totally finished helping them, we want to take 25% of that time off. So whatever that time is now, we're going to shave it off by 25%. So they started working on that, and then they realized they really didn't know how long it took in the first place. So how do you know if you've saved 25% of your time if you don't know what the 100% was you started with? So there has to be a reference point to start with. The second one, if you can't see it, you can't do it. I'm not going to make anybody do this today, but quite often when we work with groups, I'll make them actually draw what that where looks like a picture, and you stick people and all whatever stuff they want. The purpose of that isn't just to make fun of people's artwork. The purpose of that is if you can't see and can't create an image for yourself and for everybody else of what you want that where to look like, then when you get back to work and you have meetings and phone calls and emails and stuff going on and fires to put out, you're going to get distracted and you're not going to have anything that pulls you back to why we're trying to do this. It's really easy to get off track with change because we have our everyday jobs already and change just feels like extra work. So you've got to have some kind of an image, preferably written down, but if you don't, that's fine. But some kind of an image that you can go back to when you get distracted. The third point, similar to the first one, you have to know if you succeeded or failed. Your where has to be defined. So again, if I go to a customer and they say, hey, we want to grow this year. Well, I don't know what that means. If you grow by $1, is that good enough? You said you wanted to grow. Well, $2, okay, we want to grow by 20%. Okay, that's something we can measure. Okay. A lot of businesses say, well, we're good at change. And part of the reason they say they're good at change is because they haven't failed. And part of the reason they haven't failed is they never really set what their goal was in the first place. They just said, I wanted to be better. Well, if you're just a little bit better, hey, you succeeded, right? So you've got to have some kind of a measurable, defined, this is what we're trying to become. The fourth one, your where has to be agile. There's a fine line between having stick-to-itiveness and being stubborn. We talk about change and how fast environments change and how fast markets change and people change and all that stuff. So you're going to set this really cool where, and you got this awesome picture you want to be. 6 months from now, something could happen that totally blows that up. And you have to be able to adjust. And that doesn't mean you just quit. That's why I said there's a fine line between stick-to-itiveness and stubbornness, but you have to be flexible. And that's hard for people. It's hard enough to want to make change, but then to change the change you're making, that really messes with people's brains. But you have to be agile, okay? Then the last one, what I said before, you have to decide what of that stuff really matters. You start thinking through what you want your business to look like. There's going to be so many pieces to that, you can't possibly do them all at once. Almost impossible. And if you try to do them all at once, you get really frustrated and quit. When I started doing this for a living, I thought that my goal would have to be to get people to do stuff. But more often, it's to get people to do less stuff. Because we bite off way more than we can chew, and then pretty soon we just quit. Because we're overwhelmed and not making any progress. So somehow you have to decide what of that where is really important, is the most important, and prioritize, and not try to tackle it all at once. Okay? So that's great. So now you've decided where you want your business to be. You've got a clear picture of the change you're trying to make. You've clearly defined what you're trying to do. You're off to a good start, but you haven't actually done anything, and you still haven't changed anything. Okay? And there's two more pieces to that. The first one sounds kind of touchy-feely, but it's not really, and it's belief. And I think this is the part that I've found screws up more people than almost anything else. And I like that quote, whether you think you can or think you can't, you're right. There is a huge percentage of the population that doesn't really believe they can impact where their business is going or the things that go on in their day-to-day lives, careers, jobs, whatever. Okay, and I'll give you an example. About 2008 or 9 or 10, somewhere in there, I went to see a client. He was a manufacturer. And I said, how's it going? He said, well, it's not very good. He said, our customers, they just don't want to buy anything. And our competitors cut their prices in half. And the government changed some regulatory thing. And our employees are all leaving. And there's just nothing we can do. And eventually they went out of business. The next day, or a couple days after that, I went to see another client. They weren't direct competitors, but they were in the similar kind of industry. And I said to her, so how are things going here? Well, they're not very good. She said, our customers want to buy something different, so they're not buying what we sell, and we've been too slow to adjust what our product offers and what our service offers. She said, our competitors all cut their prices in half, and over the last few years, we developed so much fat and so much inefficiency that we weren't able to keep up with that. So somehow we've got to figure out how to be more efficient. So the government passed some new regulatory thing, and we just had never even really thought about that as being possible. So now we've had to get a team together to figure out how we're going to manage that. And our employees just aren't motivated by the same things they've always been. And so we've had to try to figure out different ways and different benefits and different reasons why they would want to work here, different ways to keep them. You hear the difference between those two responses. One of them was, all this stuff's happening to us and there's nothing we can do, so we're hosed. And the other one is, all this stuff is happening to us, so we have to find solutions for these problems. And you might think that, well, what's the difference? Everybody's trying as hard as they can. Your belief about change will drive your behavior about change. If you really don't think there's anything you can do, you really won't do much. You'll give it some lip service and maybe have a plan, but you'll quit halfway through because it's hard and you really don't think you can do it anyway. If you really believe that you can control what happens in your business or part of your business, then you'll work until you find solutions. Like I said, the first guy, his business doesn't exist anymore. And the second one, her business is doing really well. Okay? So it's not just some intangible thing that doesn't really matter or sounds nice. It really has an impact. When I first heard someone go through this little spiel to me, I thought, well, that makes sense. But I think most people feel pretty good about being able to make change. I think most people are confident they can impact that. So I made a point to listen to how people talk about change and how they talk about their businesses and how they talk about themselves. The reality is, I would bet that way less than half the people in the world really think that they can make change successfully. I didn't think it would be that low, but it is. And there's no magic bullet for fixing that. All I would tell you is pay attention for the next few weeks to how you talk about change and how the people in your company talk about change, how the people around you talk about change, and just see what kind of attitudes about change you really have. Because unfortunately, most people are sunk before they get started because they just don't really think it matters. Who cares? It's not going to matter. The government will just do this, or our competitors will just do this, and we can't keep up. Okay? So just be aware of that. There's really no exercise or anything like that you can do to be better. Just be aware and be conscious of how you think and how you talk. So great. So now you've got a really cool picture of where you're going to go. You're confident you can do it. You still haven't done anything. So we're going to take just a few minutes and talk about some specific, tangible things you can do, actual actions around change that you can take once you start a change process, or in some cases before you get started. So we're not going to go through all this stuff, but I'll give you a little background. For a long time, in terms of organizational change, there hasn't really been a lot of science, There's been a lot of speculation, there's been a lot of anecdotal kind of stuff, but nobody really did any what I would call statistical research about why some companies and some people are really good at change and others aren't, until just in the last couple of years. And someone did this, and I actually professionally am acquainted with this person, but they studied, I don't know how many companies and businesses around the world and interviewed leaders from all kinds of different industries and all kinds of different places, and took all that stuff together and spent a couple years trying to analyze what kinds of behavior, not just stuff you can't do, but what specific tangible things did businesses that were really good at change do or have compared to ones that weren't, right? And they came up with these 10 things, and there were a bunch, but these 10 stood quite a bit above the rest. And it wasn't just that these were the top 10. These 10 were much more impactful than the others, okay? Like I said, we're not going to go through all of these because I've done workshops on this that take half a day, and we could do that, but we have 15 minutes or 20 minutes. So we're just going to talk about 3 that have the biggest impact. But just the gist of it is the blue stuff is stuff you have to have in place before you can make change. If you don't really have that, you're in trouble to start, okay? And we'll talk about 3 of those things that you can do immediately that I've seen have the biggest impact, okay? The red things are just stuff about capability in your organization, operationally and from a people standpoint. The reality is there's very little difference between mediocre change businesses and great change businesses in terms of capability. Capability is just kind of the ante to get into the game, all right? And most of you, if you're part of an organization that's been around a while or has had some success, you've probably got the capability. The third piece up there is beliefs. That's along the same lines of what I was just talking about, only way more detail. What do people who matter to you, think about change? What's your attitude about change? There's always a certain segment of every business who, no matter what the change is, they're going to fight it. That's just unavoidable. We used to call those people cave people, citizens against virtually everything. And everybody has them. Everybody has them. And then perceived difficulty, how hard do you think it is? So the gist of it is the higher you can score yourselves on a scale of 1 to whatever, because the scale is different for all of them, we're not going to know that, the more likely you are to have change success, okay? But we're just going to talk about the 3 that have the biggest impact that I've seen, the 3 that you can do the most immediately without any kind of big project. They're just things that you can just do, okay? The first one is leadership support. And that sounds pretty simple, right? Leadership has to support whatever the change is. But I would define that as not just, hey, the boss gets in front of everybody and says we're going to do this and it's a big deal. A lot of change, that's what's happened. That's what happens. You'll have everybody get together, and the boss or the supervisor or manager will get up in front of everybody and say, we're going to do this, it's going to be great, go team. And then you never see them again. They go hide out in their office, or they sometimes do the exact opposite of what they said you're going to do. There's a client of ours I was just talking to this week, which is kind of ironic, but he was telling me a few years ago their CEO got all the supervisors and managers, management people together, and he said, it's important for us to be better leaders, so we're all going to go do some kind of leadership training. They signed them up for this leadership training, and they all went the first time, and after the first time, the CEO never showed up again, which immediately says to everybody else, this really isn't that big a deal, okay? So leadership support isn't given a rah-rah speech at the beginning, okay? It's not a one-time thing. It's not a one-time action. It's not a one-time communication. It's a continuous all of those things, and it has to be public. You can really be supportive, but if nobody knows it, they're going to kind of assume you're not. If you let people fill in the blanks, they almost never fill them in the way you want. So you've got to fill them in, okay? So leadership support. If you don't have that, people think, well, if they don't care, why should I, right? The next one, they use a PhD term, discrepancy. What that really means is the need for change. And what they're saying is, does everybody who's going to be involved in that change understand where we are now? Do they understand where we're trying to go? Do they get that that's different? This is significant. And do they get why we're doing it? Do they get that this is a big deal? Do they understand that? A lot of times in our businesses, we want to implement change. We just tell people, go do this. Hey, we're going to do this different. From now on, you're going to do it this way. We don't always take enough time to explain, this is why we're doing it. This is what we're trying to accomplish. This is the point. You know, this is all around the idea of buy-in, right? If you don't tell me why this is a big deal, if I don't understand how this, what I'm doing fits into the bigger picture, Why will I be that fired up about it? Okay? And again, that's not a one-time thing either. Constantly remind people, this is why we're doing this. This is why your part in this is a big deal. Okay? And then make sure they actually get it. Sometimes we talk at people and assume that they understand what we're saying without really making sure that they get it. So do they understand the need for change? The third one, it's what's in it for me. Unfortunately, a lot of times that acronym stands for what's in it for management. Sometimes we tell people we're going to make this change and it's going to be great because we're going to be more profitable. Well, when employees hear you say we're going to be more profitable, what they really hear is the boss is going to make more, right? So going to be more profitable or sales are going to go up. How does that impact them personally? It's not just this is best for the company, but everybody who's involved in making that change needs to understand what's in it for them personally. Is it that my job is going to be easier, safer, more fun? I'm going to get paid more, but you got to prove it to me, because we always tell employees, if we're more profitable, everybody will be able to get paid more, and then doesn't always happen. So what is the benefit for them personally? The best example of this I've ever seen is we have a manufacturing client who was having a lot of problems with accidents and injuries, serious enough, like people were getting stitches, missing work. It wasn't just, my wrist hurts or something, but these were serious medical attention requiring injuries. They said, we got to be done with this. And a lot of it was just careless, dumb stuff. And they said, okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to implement this new safety program, be different for everybody, but we're going to have a little bit of a competition. And whoever, and I think they split it up by department or division or something, but whoever's safety incidents decreases the most, percentage-wise, we're going to give you cash. We're just going to walk around and hand you cash. And the first month, almost nothing really changed, because I don't think people really thought they would do it. And at the end of that first month, one of the divisions won, or one of the segments won. And the owner walked around on the floor with a stack of hundreds and handed them out. And the next month, incidents were way down. And they're down about 95% over the last 2 years. Now, if you're really cynical, you'd say, well, they're just not reporting them so they can get the cash. And that's maybe true. But it's not true for all of them, because we weren't just talking about some questionable made-up injuries. These were pretty serious things, and they've almost entirely gone away. The point of that is, when people see what's in this for me, they see some specific benefit for me, it's a lot easier to get behind that change. Okay? So those three, out of all that stuff you saw in that circle, they're not easy, but they're easier than the rest, and you can do them right away. Okay? All you got to do is communicate. That's really what it's about for all three of those. Now, after they did that whole big model, remember all this circle, some businesses did really well and some did really poorly. So the businesses that were really good at change, they asked the leaders of those businesses, what kinds of things do you do, specifically that you do, that impact change in your business that maybe somebody else could try? So they came up with these 11 things, right? I actually had a bunch more, but these were repeatedly mentioned. One is about transparency relating to change. That kind of fits the things we just talked about. You've got to communicate why. You've got to communicate what's in it for them. You have to demonstrate as the leader that you support it. People have to understand what's going on. The second one, we just talked about that, leadership support. Leaders need to actually walk the talk. They can't just say it and then disappear. If you're leading change, whether it's with a team or a division or a whole company, you can't have preconceived ideas. Sometimes we go into something and we say, well, this is the end that we want, and here's the 15 steps everybody should take to get there. Well, it's okay to have the end, but sometimes you got to be flexible about let people find their own 15 steps to get there. Be open to new ideas. Have a clear vision. We talked about that already. Reward success. We talked about that. Don't stick to a model that fails. That's the whole your where has to be agile. Sometimes we get so fired up about where that we don't actually pay attention to the fact that maybe that wasn't right, or maybe that's not working, or maybe the way we're trying to accomplish that isn't working. So don't stick to something that's failing. 7 is easy. You obviously have to have the right people in the right positions. It's not easy to find them. It's not easy to know if it's the right position, but everybody, I think, understands the importance of people. I like number 8, and we haven't really talked about accountability or core values, and we're not going to spend a lot of time on this, but sometimes when you make change happen, we motivate the wrong things. Sometimes we motivate people to do stuff to get to our where, and they're motivated to cut corners or to act in a certain way that maybe we don't care for, that doesn't fit our core values. You can't allow your desire to make change trample on what you really want to be as a business, and that happens sometimes. Number 9, some kind of common methodology used for change. What I mean by that is if people know what the plan is and know how you're going to go about doing it, this is where we have this team work on this team work on this, it makes a lot more sense. It's like, I use this example because a client used this. He said it's kind of like if you go to the doctor and they say you have something wrong and they say we're going to fix it, but they give you no information on how they're going to do that. Well, okay, you're going to fix it, but I'm kind of freaking out because I don't know what that's all going to involve. That doesn't mean I need to understand when you tell me we'll do this and this and this. Well, you don't know what they're talking about. But at least it sounds like there's some kind of a plan. So you've got to have some kind of a methodology that people say, okay, I don't know exactly how this will go, but this is how we do it, and we know this works, so we'll stick to it. Need a clear focus. That all goes back to that same vision thing. What are the most important parts of that where? And focus on those. Let's not have everybody running in 100 different directions trying to do everything at once. Right now, we're going to work on this. And when this is great, then we'll go on to the next thing. Okay? The last one is a little more tactical, but I like that, so I put it on there. One of the, and I actually know the guy who was part of the study who does this, but every week, this particular guy, he's the CEO, he gets together with his department heads, but you could do whatever levels you want, and just talks to them for an hour on Monday usually about, here are the things that I've asked you to do, here are the things that you're responsible for doing, what's blocking that? What's in the way of that? And then my job as the leader is to get those things out of your way. Whether it's some other thing that we've assigned you that's taken up too much time, whether it's a person, whether it's a process, whether it's whatever, my job is to get stuff out of your way so you can do the stuff we've asked you to do. And I like that one because I think sometimes with change, we forget everybody already has a full-time job, and now we're going to give them extra stuff to do. There are going to be barriers, okay? There are going to be barriers. The last one, I'm not going to spend a ton of time on accountability, but I wish I'd be retired. If I could get $20 for every time I've talked to somebody who says, hey, come help our business, we've got to make change. So you go there and you can say, okay, so what's the problem? And they'll say, well, we're just not very good about accountability. We need to be more accountable. So you get in there and start working with them, and what they really mean is, I want you to hold the rest of these people accountable, but I don't really want any part of that. I should be able to do whatever I want. Right? There's a quote, and I can't remember who it is, but it says, everybody wants freedom for themselves and accountability for everybody else. And that's true. But again, if you're leading change, or if you're in a position that it looks like you're leading change, and you're not willing to be held accountable, then why would anybody else? You'll never get better from the people who work for you than you get for yourself, than you give for yourself. So think about accountability, and accountability can mean a lot of different things. I'm not a big believer in self-accountability because most of the time it doesn't work, at least not consistently. So who are you accountable to? Is there a group? Is it peers? Is it people who work for you? Is it people you work for? When you're trying to make change and everybody's got a role in that, who are they reporting to? And what are the consequences or rewards of not doing it? I mean, if we're trying to make some change and we say, Wayne, you got to do this. Wayne says, all right, I'll do it. And then a month later we get back together and Wayne hasn't done anything. And we just say, okay. Well, why would he do it? Why would anybody do that? If the outcome for me is the same whether I do it or not, I choose less work. That's just normal human behavior. So there's got to be either some reward and or some negative outcome if you don't do it. It doesn't have to be huge, brutal punishment, but there's got to be some result. I like when we work with people on stuff like this, I would never go more than 60 days without a feedback meeting, 60 or 90 days at the most. And I think really at least once a month is minimum. Everybody wants to have less meetings. It's like, oh, we have all these meetings already. Really what you need are better meetings. It isn't that getting together and providing accountability is bad, it's just we don't do a very good job of it. So there's a whole bunch of different stuff we could talk about on accountability. There's books written about accountability, and we're not going to do that. But just keep in mind that none of this really matters if you, as the person who's leading this change, are not willing to be accountable. Okay? All right. We sped up so much, we're a little bit ahead. So here's my takeaways on change. These are the things that kind of strike me when I think about change. One is that change is hard, and that's not going to, there's nothing we can do about that. But it doesn't have to be some kind of mystery. You're not naturally born good or bad at it. There are specific behaviors, specific actions that you can take, things you can do to be better at change. The second one, if you don't really understand where you're going, you're not going to get there. And that seems pretty elementary, but many, many, many businesses think they want to make change, know they have to make change, but they don't really have a picture of what they want that change to look like. They just want different. And then it doesn't happen for them. So you've got to have a really clear picture of what that is. The third one, a lot of change initiatives, too many, most, don't get going because people don't really think it's going to work. They're doing it because officially it sounds like something you should do. Hey, everybody in our industry is doing this. Okay, we'll do it. But you kind of have to do it because it doesn't really make any sense. You don't know what it's really going to do, or you don't think you can accomplish it, or you don't think it's going to make a difference. If people don't believe it's going to work, it won't work. Fourth one, companies where the best change makers have the foundation for change in place. That's that stuff we talked about, leadership support, need for change, what's in it for me. If you don't have those things lined up ahead of time, then do that. Don't start until you've got that stuff taken care of. Don't wait till you're half done before you explain to everybody why it should be important to them or what the benefit is for them. That should be the initial, before we do anything else, here's this fundamental stuff we're going to do. And the last one is change is hard work. There's no getting around that either. Changing, it's Newton's, what's that about? Object in motion stays in motion. Your business is designed to be a certain way, and so changing that means changing the momentum of how you do things. So it's going to be hard. Okay, it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be, push a button and it's done. And I think for a lot of people want their business to be better, but not if I really have to work really hard at it, because I'm busy enough already. So before you undertake some big change, or before you think, yeah, this is something we got to do, think through what are you willing to put into it in terms of a work or resources standpoint. So whenever we do stuff like this, I always think it's kind of like drinking from a fire hose. So I just rattled off for like 40 minutes. There's no way you're going to go back to your businesses and do 20 different things. But if you can do one thing differently than you were doing before, then that's probably a good 45 minutes spent, okay? I don't charge for phone calls or emails. So if you're working on something in your business and you think, I'd like to bounce something off this, or this just isn't working right, I wonder what if we could do something differently. Call me, send me an email. That's fine. I'm always happy to talk. As a trained accountant, I used to think change was evil, and now I love it. So don't hesitate to touch base with me if you want somebody to just bounce ideas off of or talk about something. If you think change is kind of cool, I have a blog every week. Check it out. It's free. I'm not trying to sell you anything. If you really are a change nerd, I wrote a book about change, and if you want one, I'll give you one for free. Looks like that picture up there. I buried those two. But if you want one, just leave your card somewhere and we'll mail it to you, okay? And if you didn't, what's that?
I can take the cards because of the package.
Give your card to our lovely Stacy, and she'll make sure you get a book. If you came in and didn't get a packet and you want a copy of any of this stuff, let me know. We'll get you some. I know we had, I think they said expect 20 to 25, so we had 25 and we ended up with 40 some, so 50. So if you didn't get, so half of you didn't get any of this. If you want it, just let us know and we'll get it to you for free, okay? The last thing.
Will also be online.
Yep, this will all be online too if you want that. The last thing I'd say about change is I think that the ability to successfully make change is going to be the competitive advantage in business over the next 5 to 10 years. You're not going to win in the marketplace with some kind of special knowledge, because if you know something within 6 months, everybody probably knows it. You're not going to win with some kind of special product features, I don't think, because if your product has something, pretty soon, always, your competitor has it in just a matter of a few months or a year. I think what's really going to differentiate businesses is the ability to recognize the change that needs to happen and then implement it efficiently. And then do it again and again. Because there's no, okay, we made change, we're good for 20 years. Right? So hopefully something out of all that sticks and there's something you can use back in your business. Is there anything else I'm forgetting?
Matt's going to be at our booth. We have a booth.
Yeah, I'll be around all day, out in the hallway out there. We have jelly beans, so if you like jelly beans.
There's door prize.
Stacy's got prizes. So thank you very much. I'll stick around for a few minutes, otherwise I'm in the hall all day, and thanks for coming.